Thanks to everyone for coming. Thanks to Rav Zalman for arranging. So, Bizman shebeis Hamikdash hoyer kayom, in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, this would be a yearly occurrence, which means that every single year, people at this time of the year would be preparing for Korban Pesach. Now, when I say this time of the year, I realize and I know that it's only Vav Nisan, but there's a reason why the Chachamim instituted the reading of the Dalet Parshiyos, which we read in Chodesh Adar, leading up to Pesach, and after we finish with Shkolim and Zohar, before Purim, after Purim we read Parshas Parah and Parshas HaChodesh. Now the Yerushalmi, Talmud Yerushalmi, the Gemara Yerushalmi asks the question, why is it that we read Parshas Parah before Parshas HaChodesh when we know that... It's fine. The what? Sharp? Yeah. Okay, it's fine. We'll manage without. So it's not open. No. So, Bekitzer, the Yerushalmi wants to know what was the sequence of events. So, Rosh Chodesh Nisan was the day, Vahi Vayom Hashmini. That's the day that the parsha of Korban Pesach was given, as Rashi says, "Achodesh Hazeh Lochem." And then, what time of the year did they shech the Parah Aduma? So the Yerushalmi says, "B'Sheni Loi," on Beis Nisan, which this year was Sunday, this past Sunday. That is the day that they brought that they shechted the Parah Aduma. So, frag the Yerushalmi, why is it that we say first Parah and then Achodesh? L'chayre, we should have said first Achodesh and then Parah. Says the Yerushalmi, the reason is because the purpose of reading Parah and Achodesh is in order for a person to prepare themselves for Korban Pesach. Now, you cannot bring a Korban Pesach if you're Tomei. Therefore, first people needed to look after and take care of the inyan of the Parah Aduma to become pure, and it took minimum 7 days, and then they were ready to go and do the Korban Pesach. So every year before Pesach, around this time, people would be thinking, how will I be able to do the Korban Pesach? Now, the Korban Pesach, there was no chiyuv that every single person had to shech a Korban Pesach, but you had to sign up. You had to be part of a group, a chabura, and if once you were part of a group, you knew that you're going to have a kazayis of Korban Pesach. How many kazaysim would you say we have in such a lamb?
50, 24. 50.
You tell me how much was it in kilo? How many kilo was it? I'm not sure. 25 kilo. So let's say 50 pounds. A pound is much more than a kazayis. So let's say you have here 80 kazayis, because in the times of the Beis Hamikdash, you would have to eat every single part of this lamb. You were not allowed to leave over anything. Not only that, but they made sure that people only had a kazayis. Before they ate the Korban Pesach, people would eat another Korban Chagiga, which is called Chagigas Yudalet, that they should have enough meat to eat not from Korban Pesach, because the Korban Pesach has a din of Nechal al Hasoiva, which means that was sort of the dessert, that was sort of the last thing you ate. Now, just to put things into perspective, who can think of more than one reason why this lamb, such a lamb, wouldn't be kosher for Korban Pesach? Besides the fact that it's not shechted, and besides the fact that it's treif, it's chazer treif as they say, but there's another reason why such a type of a thing would not be kosher for Korban Pesach. Who can think of a reason? Yes. It has no. We're talking. It's raw. Okay. So, but I'm asking about raw. Right? You're right. But I'm asking if anyone can think of a reason why this wouldn't be. Oh, very good. Now, just to put things into perspective, every country has different rules. In Canada, the lambs aren't as big. Here in England, they're very much into lamb. And therefore, they figured it out much better than in other places. And the age of the lamb, it's quite a big lamb, because it's not worth to kill a lamb that's smaller. But the Korban Pesach was much, much smaller. Who knows how old a lamb was allowed to be? Up to a year. So basically, it was either a lamb or a goat, and that was the Korban Pesach. So I'm not sure exactly what age this lamb is. There is a way to tell from the teeth, but they didn't give us the head, so we can't tell how old this lamb was when they checked it. But by the way, who knows what the last thing this lamb said before it was killed? The last thing.
Nothing.
Man, that was the last thing it said. And anyway, so Lamaisa. So as I said, this was something that people were busy with at this time of the year. Now, another thing which I wanted to point out is that today, in our day and age, who knows why we had to go, and it wasn't so easy, but Baruch Hashem, we have some very good people. Zalmi was busy with it, Avrumi was busy with it, and you know, to have it in your car, all these things, it's not so simple. How do I know? Because in the past I did it myself. I used to have one, when we lived in Canada, I had one in my freezer. We had a freezer, because every year I would give a shiur, and up to the year we moved, we had it in the freezer. My kids still remember the feet sticking out. That's the memory that they had. And I didn't bring it with me here, and Baruch Hashem, we were able to find one here. Now, I'm sorry, why do you think we had to go and buy a non-kosher lamb? You go to the shops, there are plenty of kosher lamb. Lamb is a big thing here in England. Why did we have to go to buy a non-kosher lamb? Who can think of a reason? Yes?
Because they cut off most of the lamb, so we don't...
Okay, so when you go to a shop and you ask them for a whole lamb, they'll only give you half of it, or less than half. In the lamb it comes at less than half. Why? Because we only eat, believe it or not, only till here. This whole part, this is called the rack. This part we eat, and in there we find all the fancy cuts we have in lamb. The first cut, the second cut, the cutlets, whatever you want, all the different fancy names, it's all from here lower. But all this we don't eat. Why don't we eat all of this? Because of chaylev. And this is part of what we're going to learn about. We have the copies of the psukim in Parshas Vayikra and Parshas Tzav, and we're going to see the different part as much as we can. We're going to see the different parts of the chalovim, and this is why we don't use the whole achoirayim, it's called, the whole hindquarters. We don't use. We only use the kitbi, the tabbi, the front part of the animal. Now, let's start as follows. Let's take a look at the psukim. So, there's two sides. There's Vayikra and there's Tzav. So let's start with Parshas Vayikra, where the Torah first starts with the different mincha. Now we go to Shlomim. So if you look at the pasuk, in pasuk Gimel, Kapitel Gimel, pasuk Gimel. So who wants to volunteer to read from the Chumash? Fine, I'm going to have someone read. Okay, we need a volunteer.
Lisha. Hey, three cheers for Lisha.
Okay, Avrumi should send someone that's gonna read.
Samuel Aaron.
Come on, it's another activity. And okay, so Osher, okay, Osher is going to read Gimel Gimel, Perek Gimel, Pasuk Gimel. So explain, translate. You should bring a korban from the hikr means you should the offering part of it. No, you bring the whole animal. But shlomim, who knows what was unique about shlomim? Why is it called shlomim? There's a reason why it's called shlomim. Shlomim means peace. Why is it called shalom? Shalom. Why is it called shlomim? What does Rashi say? Who remembers what Rashi says? Rashi says the reason is because when you brought a chatos, who ate from the chatos? The kehanim, and that's it. And a oila, who ate from the oila? The mizbeach, right? But when you had the shlomim, who had from the shlomim? The kehanim had their part, which will show the chaz of the shoy, and the baalim had the rest of it. Not only that, but what do we find in the Torah in Parshas Re'eh? That until they came into Eretz Yisrael, if a person was in the mood of a steak, what did they have to do? They had to bring a cow as a korban, a shlomim, and then they got to eat their steak. Only later, Ki Yarchiv Hashem Elokecha Gevulcha, that Eretz Yisrael became too big, and you couldn't expect someone that every time you wanted to eat dinner, a steak dinner, you would have to come to Yerushalayim. No. That's when they were allowed to eat, to shech their own korbanos. So according to that, a shlomim is something which is matil shalom, the mizbeach, the baalim, the kehanim, everyone gets their part. So now, Osher is saying, the hikri means that the offering to the mizbeach is so how do you explain that in simple, in translated English? Chayla is the fat that covers the kerev. Kerev is the inside, the stomach. That's kol ha'chayla v'asher al ha'kerev. And then it's shtei ha'kloyos, the two kidneys. That's ha'chayla v'asher aleihem. Asher al ha'ksalim, that's on the ksalim. Okay? That's ha'yoseres al ha'kovayit al ha'kloyos yisrenu. So we have here 7 adjectives of different types of halom. So let me show you the first one. Some people, I overheard people asking, where's the inside? Now, if anyone wants to volunteer for next time to get out the inside, by all means, but I can guarantee you, Ner is not going to agree to have it done here. This is not something for the faint-hearted, and it's also not clean, etc. So it's impossible, it's illegal, by the way. It's impossible to get a lamb unless you kill it yourself. Otherwise, it's not an option. So what they give it to you is called eviscerated. They eviscerate the inside, and this is the best you can get when it comes to the thing. But the way you do it is, this is exactly how the lamb is in the Beis HaShchit, in the abattoir, that, they shecht it. So you can tell here, you can't see, but this is the Mochem HaShchit there in the bar by the neck. And then they open it up, and basically, the way Rebbeinu Shlomo created both humans and the hafted animals is that there's a diaphragm. Does anyone know what a diaphragm is? Okay. Okay, so a diaphragm is basically a muscle that separates what is in the inside of an animal and a human. So we have 2 parts. We have what's called Evrei Hamashima, the breathing organs. What are the breathing organs? Who knows? It's the lungs and the heart, because they work together. So you have the Evrei Hamashima, which is the heart and the lungs, which are not here, because again, you cannot take out, legally you can't take out a lung or a heart. Maybe one day we'll be able to get it. If you go to Shechita, by Shechita you can get away with it. But the lung and the heart, then there's a diaphragm. This diaphragm is like a muscle that separates the Evrei HaNashima, which are towards the top of the body, which here is the bottom, because as you can tell, this lamb is hanging by its hind legs, so it's upside down. But this is the way, when you learn Chulin, this is the way you learn it, because that's how they always, this method is as old as they come. This is how they would clean out a lamb. And even in the Mishnah, who remembers the Mishnah in Masechtas Psochim that speaks about how they would take off the skin it, and it was mamash the same way. This is the way they did it. They had, who remembers, what did they have in the Beis Hamikdash? Hooks. They would have hooks. So what was the purpose of the hook? The purpose of the hook was like this. They hung it up on the hook, they took up this, they skinned it, they took everything out, and all the parts that had to be brought on the Mizbeach was put on the Mizbeach, and the rest was taken home to roast, because it had to be roasted whole. This is how it had to be roasted. Okay, so now, the diaphragm, as we said, separates from the lung and the heart. What is right after the diaphragm? You have the liver, and you have the kidneys, you have the, what's the tchol called? The
intestine.
No, the intestines, obviously, the stomach, but then there's the tchol.
Pancreas.
The pancreas, thank you. So basically, this is what you have. Now, the first thing that when you open it up, as you can tell, they take a knife, they open it up, and this part they use a saw, because this is already the sternum, that's the bone. So you need a stronger tool. Now, the first thing that comes out is a piece of fat like this. This is what's called chaylev she'al hakerev. This is how it looks. It looks like a plastic, but this is chaylev de oiraisa, which means if someone eats a kazayas of this, they get chorus. This is what the Torah says, that chaylev is forbidden to eat. And as you can tell, they gave us a whole bag, because this is something, what do the goyim use this for? They make cigars, meaning those, what's it called, those meat cigars. They use this as a wrapper. They wrap it around. I can't tell you what it tastes like, because we can't have it. Also, when they make shawarma, we know what shawarma is, but when they make shawarma non-kosher, they use, between every layer of meat, they put this thing. And that's why I asked for one piece, but they don't sell it as one piece, because no one buys it. In other words, they have bags, whatever, so they gave us this whole bag. Each bag, here you can have probably 50 or more of these pieces. As you can tell, they come, you have to open it up, and then that's how it is. So this is something that many animals have. Cows have it, and even some non-kosher animals have. Chaylev hamachasa es hakerev. You can tell how, when you open it up, it's like, this is what it is. I don't want to tear it too much, but again, when you open up the stomach, this is machasa es hakerev. The first thing that comes out, the bulk, is the stomach. How many stomachs does a lamb have? Who knows? 4 stomachs, right? I can't tell you the names in English, but in Lashon Kodesh you have the keres, the hemses, the besakoises, and the kevo. This is, all kosher animals have these 4 stomachs. This is why they ruminate it. They have malakera, but that's the way it is. So this is the first chaylev that comes out. Now, by the way, this has a smell. This is the smell of the Beis HaShchita. This is what, when you go to Beis HaShchita, that's what you smell. So this is the chaylev doiraisa of chaylev she'al hakerev, amachas es hakerev. So that was number 1. So if you take a look, as a chaylev amachas es hakerev, es kol chaylev asher al hakerev, we cannot show, because we don't have that. Because as I said, the stomachs are not here. Okay, now let's go to the next one. The next one is the Eshtei HaKaloyos V'Sachelev Asher Aleim. Now, I specifically asked, I'm taking a knife, this is a kosher knife,
What's the difference between chaylev hashmaskes hakerev and chaylev asher al hakerev?
So that's what I said. The chaylev she'ar hakerev we can't see because we don't have the kerev. But that's on the stomach itself. That is a chaylev that's part of the. That's totally outside, and that's more connected. In other words, you're asking a good question. So basically, this piece of fat is totally independent of the stomach. And basically, when you open up the animal, this comes out. Now, just to put things into perspective, whoever heard of krum toisav v'nikla? Did anyone hear of this term? Krum toisav v'nikla. So this is the definition of chaylev d'oraisa. Kosher fat, right? We know exactly what fat means. Whoever eats steak knows what fat means. All the fat that we eat is obviously kosher. It's called shuman, which means it's fat, but it's kosher. Why? Because the Gemara says that the definition of chaylev is when it's not connected to the piece of meat. In other words, when you have a steak, what are you busy doing? You're busy separating the fat from the meat. Some people like it, some people don't. But that's what you keep on doing. You keep on cutting away. Why? Because the fat is embedded in the meat. It has a word. Here in England, they don't really know about it because people are not so much into their meats. But in America, there's a word for it. Who knows the word? Marbleized, right? So marbleized means that the meat and the fat is together, and the more it has the marbleization, the more expensive and the more choshev. In America, they grade the meat. Before they sell it, they grade it. So the supreme, the best, prime, whatever those names are, has to do with fat. So that fat is mechuber. It's sort of connected. What is the definition of chaylev d'oraisa? That it's not connected. And here you can see perfectly. This just sits on the stomach, but it's not. There's a big nafik min halacha in hilchas treifus, because we know that if you have any organ that has a hole, it can become treifa. The Gemara says that there could be a tzad that the chaylev is soisim. The chaylev protects the hole, but that's only by kosher fat. Fat that's osir cannot be soisim. Why? Because it's not connected. So therefore, it's mamash very loose. So that's the first thing. That was Salman's question, and the answer is it's two different things. One is that it sits on it covers it. The other one is more connected. Now, just to Shemar Sa'ayin, this knife is milky, kosher knife. I'm going to cut treif meat with it, so afterwards we'll have to wash it well. Because it's cold, you're allowed if there's nothing else available. So I'm cutting a bit more that we should be able to see. Now here, I specifically asked, Zalman did a very good, Avram did a very good job. I specifically asked that I want the kidneys to still be in there. That's the idea of a coat rack, that you can move it around 360 degrees. Yes. So basically,
She's moving around.
Stop moving around.
I need a volunteer. Move that table.
Oh. Yeah, yeah, please not.
We'll move it around. Anyone else with gloves? I need another pair of hands.
Do what?
You don't need them all.
Identical.
No, like,
kidneys. These two red things are the kidneys, and this is the chaylev. What's the lashon haposuk? That's the shtei kloyos. That's a chaylev asher aleihen. This is the chaylev asher aleihen on the kidneys. All this is chaylev the oiraisa. And there's a big machlokes in the Gemara. I'm going to do it soon, because once I do it, we have to disconnect it. How far the fat in the kidney is also. I'll show you the other. Here you can see the kidney and the chaylev asher aleihen. So this is the kidney, this is the kidney. There's way more chaylev than the kidney. Right? The kidney is totally encompassed in chaylev. This is the next pasuk, but shtei kloyos. This is all belongs on the mizbeach. You could not have kidney meat from a carbon because the kidneys belong on the mizbeach. There's a Gemara that gives us a story, not about the kidney, but a different part which we don't have here. The story with the aliyah. Who knows the story in the Gemara in Pesachim with the aliyah? There was a goy that tricked the Kohanim in Yerushalayim, and he came and took part in Korban Pesach. So he went to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, and he said, "Did you ever have tail?" He says, "No." He says, "You think you're having Korban Pesach? The best part, they're not giving you." So the next year, he went and he asked for tail. They said, "Tail? Who has tail? The tail goes on the Mizbeach." So they asked him, "Who told you to ask for tail?" He says, "Yehuda ben Beseira." So they did their homework and they found out that he was a goy. But anyway, the same with the kidney. If anyone's boasted that they had kidney from Korban Pesach, en kazeh davar, there's no such thing. Who remembers the Gemara in Pesachim about when they wanted to count how many Yidden were there? There was 1 year in the time of the second Beis Hamikdash that they wanted to count. So what did they do? They told the Kohanim they should hold on to the kidneys. They should count the kidneys. How many kidneys did they count? 1.2 million kidneys. And the Gemara says each animal had minimum 10 people. That means that you had 12 million people eating Korban Pesach that year in Yerushalayim. Kiflayim kiyotzim Mitzrayim. That's the Gemara. So what did they have to do? Before they counted the kidneys. A small little thing, that's what they did. So this is the chaylev she'al haklois. Now, who remembers the Rashi, which some people have a hard time understanding what Rashi means. It's on the paper. Take a look in Rashi.
Right.
So before we go to Rashi, let's finish the pasuk. So the shtei kloyos, that's a chaylev asher aleihen, asher al haksolim. What does asher al haksolim mean? So what does Rashi say? Who wants to read the Rashi? Stand up, read the Rashi. Asher al haksolim. Yes. Haksolim, what does Rashi say? Haksolim? Flanken, first the flanken. Okay, now flanken, we can't pass Rashi without explaining what flanken is. Who knows what flanken is? Flanken is a term that we, Ashkenaz Jews, we invented flanken. Why did we invent flanken? Because we could not have most of the animal, as we said. Now, by the way, I didn't bring a cow for a reason, because we wouldn't manage a cow, it's too heavy. But whatever you see here is exactly the same in a cow, just much smaller. Now, in a cow or in a lamb, where are the best parts of the meat?
Shoulder.
So, shoulder. Okay, so let me explain to you about the shoulder, but that's wrong. The best part of the meat is the T-bone steak, the sirloin, the filet mignon. These are cuts that we don't know about. Why? Because we can't have them. Someone mentioned shoulder. In the Goyish market, shoulder is used for salami. In other words, all the cuts that we make into who knows what, the only cut that's choshev is the rib eye. But otherwise, everything else is literally rubbish. And the reason why the abattoirs are happy to do business with the Jewish people is because they sell all of this. They sell for prime price and premium because these are the choshev cuts. All of this they would have to give away. And here you have some Jews that are paying top pound or top dollar for this part of the animal. So that is why shoulder is not, I mean, to us it's called, who knows the other name for shoulder? Fairy steak. But that's why it's a fairy tale steak. In other words, we made a steak out of nothing. It's not, we call it steak. But basically, the fairy steak comes from the shoulder in a cow, a beef. But the point is that we have made many choshev cuts out of this. Now, flanken is something which by the goyim they throw out. What is it? A bunch of fat. It's not nothing more. It's, a bit of meat, a lot of bone, and a bunch of fat. But because we don't have anything else, we made it into something very kosher. And today in America, maybe here also, you have many non-kosher butchers that they have something called kosher style, which means that they sell the cuts from what Jews eat, but obviously it's not kosher. So Rashi says the solim are the flanken. Now, flanken is a word in English as well. It's called the flanks. What's a flank? The flanks are the sides, right? So animals, humans have flanks. Now, flanken, by the way, what we call flanken is only by the ribs, because we only eat up to the end of the ribs. We don't eat anything there. But here, the solim, the Torah is referring to this chaylev, which goes by the sides of the animal. And Rashi says that shachaylev shalakaloyos kishabahei mechaya hu begoiva haksolim. The chaylev on the kloyos, when the animal is alive, it's begoiva haksolim v'heim melamato. In other words, this animal is vertical. But how would it be when it's alive? More horizontal. So if it's horizontal, you can imagine what this would look like. So this would sort of be like straight, and when it's straight, that's why the Torah calls it v'shtei hakloyos v'sachelav asher alein asher al haksolim. It's on top of the ksolim because the kitties, as we see, are connected, let's call it, to the spine. So because they're connected to the spine area, the spine is on top, so it's al haksolim. And then, now we go to the sayoseres alasovit. Here you see okay, I need my one here. Okay, so pull it apart. So as you can see, this is where it starts. So, and this is called the ksolim. Now, here we have the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm, we can't see much because it's basically a muscle, and in order to clean it out, then you take it out. But what you can tell is, you see here, there's a piece of the diaphragm left. This is the diaphragm, and this is what they call the rote fleisch, the red meat, because the diaphragm is, as I said, a muscle, but it's connected to the two sides with meat. And that meat they sell. In other words, they don't need this because this is rubbish, so that's why they took it out. In other words, if I would be able to ask him, I would tell him to keep it as much as possible, but he only left a small piece here. But this is what the Torah says, that the whole diaphragm you have to put on the Mizbeach together. The Lashon HaPosuk, if you see there is the Sachelav Asher Al Haksolim Ve'es HaYoseres. What's Yoseres? Look in Rashi. What does Rashi say on Yoseres? Read it. Hudoifen Hamosov. That is the wall. It's like a wall, like a curtain. Right? Doifen Hamosov. Shekoirin Ivrish Ibeloshan Arami Chatzre de Kavli. So this is what the Torah says, that this part also goes along onto the Mizbeach, together with a piece of the red meat. Then we have the al hakoved besides the koved. So the Rashi says that you have to take off a piece of the liver and the kloyos. That is more or less what you have to bring on the mizbeach. What? No, that's fine. So here you see all the chalovim, chaylev shalakerev, kloyos, and also the yoseres al hakoved. Now here. Okay, so if you see here, this is the other side. Okay, this is the other side of the kidney, and if you want to eat it, so obviously you have to take off. You see how this comes off? It literally slides off. It's not like the meat, the fat. You see, look, it's krum v'niklav. It's like when you peel an orange. When you peel an orange, this is what it looks like. You see, it just comes off like a peel. It's not part. It doesn't rip. It doesn't rip the meat. If you take off the fat from a steak, the meat comes with it. This, you saw how entrenched it looked. Look how easy it comes off. It just literally slips off like this with the hand. This is the kidney, and then I'll show you where there's the machloikis in the Gemara. How much? You see, all this just slides off, comes off, and it's tiny. Yes, the kidney of a lamb is tiny. Of a chicken is even smaller. Now here you have a very big shaila in the Gemara. This is where it's connected. This is where the fat is connected to the kidney. So the question is, how deep do you have to go when you take? So obviously all this has to come off, all the krum, etc. The krum is the covering. But then the question is, how deep you have to go. So the Lashon HaGemara is megaman. If you have to go all the way in or not, but definitely whatever is in the outside is definitely part of what's aser. And then the question is inside, how deep you have to go. So we have 5 minutes to clean up basically. But again, this is when I was thinking what copies to give. I have 4 more. There's the 2 blot Gemara and there's Ramban. There's a big Ramban in Parshas Vayikra and in Parshas Tzav. But we don't have enough time. But in Metz Hashem, you'll wrap your heads around this, and then we can